Okay, so we're continuing in Torah Samach Aleph in Likutei Moharan, and we were talking last week about manhigim that are called b'shem rebbe, but really their limudim are from these mosaros, from these excesses of self, from the place of being absorbed in self, from a place, as we explained, of being overly consumed with one's self and going into a place of leadership, not from the world of Malchus, which is lesle migarme klum. Malchus, the sphere of Malchus, and Malchus, of course, means a melech, means a leader. So Malchus really should be the paradigm of leadership. And Malchus, the Torah, the Svarim tell us, Malchus is lesle migarme klum. Malchus doesn't have anything of its own. Malchus is nukva. Malchus is actually the feminine. It's a fascinating thing. Malchus, which is the sphera of being a melech, is actually the sphera that's nukva, that's feminine. It's less than megarme klum, has nothing of its own. It only receives. Because really, to be a melech, to be a leader, to be a rebbe in a holy way, in a kadosh way, means to be in a position of leadership because of receiving. Because not that I want to be doing this, but I'm wanted to be doing this. There's a position, there's something that's needed of me, that I am only here because I'm receiving the need for others to receive shefa. And if I'm receiving the need for others to receive shefa, so then the shefa comes through me. And so I go into a place of being a melech, but I'm a melech only as a conduit, only as a vessel, as a receptacle. So the malchus itself is actually lesle megarme klum. The malchus has nothing of its own. And Rabbi Nachman says, in what we learned last time, a line that I wanted to go back to emphasize, because I think it's just really so powerful, is Rabbi Nachman says that those who are not proper rabbeim, and they are really being lomed from the place of mosaros, of excess of self, and they're not receiving from that which is above them and that which is beyond them. They're only receiving from within themselves. So what he says is that they're not able to manhig themselves. And kol sheken, if they're not able to manhig themselves, they're not able to manhig anybody else. But they're not able to be manhig themselves. It was interesting. A few years ago, I was at a mental health professionals conference for frum therapists. And there were a whole bunch of speakers, and all the questions and answers and speakers and presentations, they were all about how to be a better therapist, how to do it in the right way, for the client. It was all focused on how to provide for the client. All the sessions were about the clients, about the individuals, about other people, what other people need, how to help them best, what's going on for them. And it was so interesting because there was one speaker, actually somebody that I personally love, Reuven Leichter. There was one speaker that shifted the focus of his whole session. And he didn't speak about the clients at all. He spoke about how when one of us experiences or meets with a client, how we have to ask ourselves, within ourselves, where we struggle, with what the client is struggling, where we see that in ourselves. And he said you have to be really, really keen and thorough about asking yourself that question, because on the surface of it, there might be a lot of issues where you meet with somebody and they talk about their struggle and you don't relate to that struggle at all. It's like, no, that's not maybe I have other struggles, but not that. And you don't see that in yourself at all. But he said, I think he said it about Rav Yerucham Levovitz, that he wouldn't allow himself to be alone in a room with somebody else's money. He wouldn't allow himself to be alone in a room with somebody else's money. It's a wild thing. Why? Because he was afraid of his taiva of gzela, of stealing. Did he think he was going to steal the money? He didn't think he was going to go ahead and take the money. He was going to steal the money. What's the pshat? Is that he found within himself the aspect, the tiny nakuda within himself of a desire to take the money, and he didn't trust himself, not that he would actually act on it, but he didn't want to be in a position where he experienced that sense of, I want to take somebody else's money. So there's a really, really kind of thorough combing through of oneself. And a person has to know themselves. They have to know if that's right for them. Because a person can kind of drive themselves crazy if they have an unhealthy relationship with that kind of idea. It can become a kind of OCD type of thing. So you have to know yourself. I'm not saying anything practical for any individual. I have no idea. But as a concept, a person in a position of leadership, a position of hashpah, more than anyone else, possibly, needs to be incredibly introspective. Because there's nothing easier to hide behind than the mask of leadership. There's no easier way to justify why it's okay for me to be doing X, Y, or Z than to say I'm doing it and it's okay for me to be doing it because of, I don't know, a heter kiruv, or because, you know, my davening is not as good, but it's because I need to be I need to be doing something else for the sake of the klal. There's no bigger yetzer hara in kedusha, right? We have two types of yetzer hara. We have yetzer hara that is just pure taiva, that we have a taiva to do something that's clearly wrong. We know it's not what we should be doing, but we have a yetzer hara to do it. So we have a taiva, we have a yetzer hara. So sometimes we were tempted by that. There's clear sense of right and wrong, but there's just such a strong taiva that it's a real nisayon. That's the obvious yetzer hara. Sometimes it's very difficult, but in a sense it's easier because it's very easy to identify. But there's a second type of yetzer hara, which is the yetzer hara that masks itself in the confusion of kedusha. There's a yetzer hara that presents itself as if it's kadosh. It justifies itself to us through the lens of kedusha and tara and being a holy yid and taking on more things and doing better. And it masks itself in those ways. This is where Rav Steinsaltz talks about, I believe it's in Parshas Vayishlach, in his Sefer on Parsha, where he talks about the Chazal that say that the sorrow shel Esav, the messenger of Esav, appeared to Yakov Avinu in the form of a Talmud Chacham, is one day on Chazal. So Rav Steinsaltz asks, like, what's pshat that the sorrow shel Esav, the Yetzer Hara, the Sam, the other side, appeared as a Talmud Chacham? So he says this yesod, because there's two types of Yetzer Hara. There's the Yetzer Hara that appears in the form of just incredibly enticing taiva. It's clear that it's wrong. It's just incredibly powerful taiva. And then there's an even more dangerous, in a certain sense, Yetzer Hara, which is the Yetzer Hara that appears not in the form of taiva, but in the form of Talmud Chacham, in the form of kedusha. And I think that in some ways, maybe there's no more powerful or cunning Yetzer Hara de kedusha, that second type of Yetzer Hara, than when the Yetzer Hara masks itself in justifying what we're doing because of working for the sake of the klal. Rav Itchemeyer talks about this not as a person being a rebbe, but he talks about this as the klipa of askanos. That there's a klipa of being an askan. There's a klipa of somebody taking on all these different things for the sake of the klal, and that becoming their justification for why it's okay that they're not working on themselves as much, that they're not refining their midos in a quieter way, why they're not focusing more on their shalom bayis, why they're not focusing on their shmir salashon, why they're not focusing on their shmir seinayim, whatever they're doing, because they can justify it through this broader sense of, but I'm doing this for the sake of, I'm doing this for Klal Yisrael. because I'm involved in all these different things that are so important. And now I don't have to think about it's not even a conscious thought of I don't have to think about it. It's just not even a thought, because I'm so engrossed in the chashivas of what I'm doing for the klal that I'm not even thinking about that. So going back to that conference I was at that I was mentioning a few years ago, where Rav Leichter spoke about, he was talking to all these therapists, and he was the only speaker who didn't talk about the clients. He spoke about the therapists. And I thought was so interesting to me was, I was talking to people afterwards, like, which sessions did you enjoy? What did you find interesting, meaningful, etc.? People really didn't appreciate what he said. Like, they totally didn't get it. It was just straight over their heads. They mamish didn't get it. And personally, I thought that was such a pachad, because it was so obvious what he was saying. It was so essential. There was such an urgency to what he was saying, which I think is what Rabbi Nachman is talking about here. I think in the small level that I understand it, that there are manhigim shenekraim b'shem Rebbe, shelimudam me'elu hamosaros, people that can be called Rebbe. They're in positions of hashpah, but where are they drawing from? They're not drawing from what we explained before, from the place of Malchus, and Malchus is actually the one sphera which is Nukva, and Malchus is actually Leslie Megar Meklum. Instead, they're drawing from Mosaros, which, as we explained last week and 2 weeks ago, Mosaros means an excess of self. They're drawing their position of leadership over others, not from others needing them to be in a position of leadership. They're drawing their position of leadership from their need to be a leader. That's the fundamental difference. Am I in this position because I'm needed, or am I in this position because I need this position? This position needs me, or I need the position. The mosaros is the excess of self, which he's going to get to in a moment when he talks about smicha. And because of that, what happens to these people? They can't be manhig even themselves. And then he says, Mikol Shekin, that he can't be manhig anybody else. A person who can't be manhig himself cannot be manhig anybody else. If we want to figure out how to be better mashpiyim, how to be better mechanchim, how to be better parents, it's not about how to be a better parent. It's about how to be a better human being. And in Mela, you'll be a better parent. What's going on inside of you when your kid does X, Y, or Z? It's not about the parenting tips on how to respond to this or that. I mean, those things are important also, but they're irrelevant until you figure yourself out. There's a story I saw in Rav Tzvi Meyer's Sefer on Shabbos that he brings down that the Brisker Rav was once asked by an individual who said that he just moved into a new apartment building, and he's very concerned because when he went to see the apartment, apparently the neighbors were all of a certain type of frumkeit, which is what he wanted to be around for his kids. He wanted his kids to grow up in an environment of a certain level of Shmir Shabbos. And after moving in, the demographic, I guess, changed, and he was very concerned for his kids that the neighbors were not good influences, and Shabbos wasn't the kind of Shabbos he had envisioned for his children. And he was very worried about how his kids would experience Shabbos. And as he's talking about this, the Brisker Rav is getting more and more agitated. And finally, he can't hold back anymore, and he says, why are you talking about your kids? What about your Shabbos? So what about your kids' Shabbos? What about your Shabbos? How is it affecting your Shabbos? And it struck me because I saw in the Sefer Amud HaEmes from the Kotzker Rebbe that they bring down a story that the Kotzker was once approached by somebody who asked for his bracha that his kids become Talmidei Chachamim. He asked the Kotzker, I want bracha that my child should become a Talmid Chacham. And the Kotzker Rebbe said, if you keep focusing on getting brachas that your kids become Talmidei Chachamim, then the only possible outcome is that your kids also go for brachas that their kids become Talmidei Chachamim. If you want your kids to become Talmidei Chachamim, become a Talmid Chacham. Stop asking for brachas about your kids. You do it. The Brisker Rav, stop asking about your kids' Shmir Shabbos. What about your Shmir Shabbos? This is a real klipa. It's a klipa of displacing the work and the focus that I need on myself, displacing that onto whoever it is that I'm being mashpia on, and using that as an avoidance, in a sense, of what I need to be focusing on for myself. And that all comes from what Rabbi Nachman's calling mosaros, this excess of absorption within self, that I'm rooted, myself is rooted in myself, that everything I draw is from within me. So I can't receive from something beyond myself. I can't give to something beyond myself. And therefore, I can't even actually see myself. Because if I'm looking at all of those other things and thinking that that's what I need to focus on, but that's covering over myself, then I'm not even seeing myself. So it's this incredible kind of irony where the more that I'm focused on other, the more that I'm actually able to see myself. The more that I'm absorbed in myself, the more that think I'm seeing other, and I'm not really seeing other or myself. So Emunas Chachamim means that I don't think I'm the whole thing. That I'm in a place of being able to receive. And this is Rabbi Nachman then continues on to explaining, this has everything to do with smicha. As he says, let's read just a few lines inside and then I'll explain what I mean when I'm saying that I think this is connected and has everything to do with smicha. By giving smicha to a rebbe that's not fit, our writings become diminished, they become weaker. They don't have any power, any potency anymore. As we explained last time, every single human being is born into the world with a desire, with a search to find some broader sense of meaning. Everyone's looking for something to worship, something to give, to anchor oneself in, something to give power to. So if our sources of authority, our writings, which are authority in Ksav, Torah Shebechsav, and our Rebbeim, which are authority in personality, in voice, Torah Shebal Peh, if those things don't hold up to the test, they don't seem reliable, that people don't experience the sense that I can trust this, that I can place my anchor, I can center myself in this, in the Ksav Yad and in the Baal Peh, in the writings and in the people. So then Memela, they're going to place that power into other things, into the other side, because no one's getting rid of the search to find an anchor in something bigger, in something authoritative. Everyone's still searching for that. The question is, where are they going to put it? So if they can't put it in Kedusha, they're going to put it in the other side. And so now there's only power to their ksavim. And now even Jews are going to have to go search. This language, muchrachim. Why is it muchrach? It's muchrach because we're hardwired to search for that. So when we're not finding it in our world, we're going to search for it somewhere else. We can't stop searching for it. It's muchrach. Then now we're going to have to go learn their ksav yadam. When you have somebody, this is such an important thing. Because when you have somebody who is a deep person, someone who's a deep person, I think this language of muchrachin, lilmod ksav shalom is so important, because think about it like this. If you have someone who's a deep person, it's just by nature, their soul, their mind, their feeling, they're a deep person. But the only Torah they're exposed to is very shallow, superficial, or that has negative language. Let's take that language away. It's just surface level Torah. It's simple Torah. But they're a deep person. So what's going to happen? Like, what's going to happen? They're gonna change who they are, and they're not going to be deep anymore. That's not what happens. What happens is that they need to fill their inborn natural need for something deeper. They need to fill that. They need to find where they can get that. So now they're mukhrach, or Rabbeinu is telling us, they're mukhrachin lilmod ksav shalahem. They have to go look at outside sources and outside texts and outside thinkers that present ideas that are deep. And the world has deep ideas. They might be tameh, but the world has deep ideas. Someone who's a deep thinker and is not served that within the world of Torah, they don't even have a choice. They're mukhrachin lilmod ksav shalahem. If the people are not trustworthy, people are looking for safety. They're looking for something reliable. So they're mukhrachin lilmod ksav shalahem. This is, I really feel, is one of the most imperative things of what we need to do in this world for ourselves, as I keep saying, and for others. Is the Torah that is learned we need hafoch ba'hafoch the kula, but it's actually all there. It's a question of what's being presented, what's there on the smorgasbord, so that everybody with their teva, their shorish neshama, can find within Torah what they're looking for. But if we narrow down, it's like the palette of colors, the Baskin-Robbins flavors, like how many flavors do they say it has? I don't know, what is it, like 37 flavors? All the flavors are like the 100 colors on the artist's palette. And now you slice it down that there's only 2 flavors. There's only 3 colors. There's black, white, and gray. So what are all the people with colorful souls supposed to do? What are the people who like cotton candy ice cream supposed to do if you only serve chocolate and vanilla? Like what is going to happen? That's what Rabbeinu is saying. Is that if we don't serve all the flavors of Torah, if we don't allow the palette to have all the colors that Torah actually has, and Torah is rachav min hayam, Torah is endless in its colors, it's endless in its flavors. It has so many dimensions, so many ways to be a kosher yid, so many ways that a person can find themselves, their teva, their shorish neshama within the world of Torah. If we open all of them up to allow them all to be a real possibility and not a b'di'evet, not, well, if it didn't work for you in the system, it didn't work for you in the real way, so okay, so nebuch, here's an option. No, if we open them up that they're all truly lechatchilas, then people don't have to go to ksav shalahem because they found what they were looking for in ksav shalanu. But as long as we haven't done that, then what happens is Yisrael yu muchrachim lilmod ksav shalahem, because they have to find it. They have to satiate their soul. When this happens, gozim gamkein legarish b'nei Yisrael mimakom hayishuv. So then what happens when they do that is where we send away the Jewish people from their true dwelling place. Shenis yashvu sham Yisrael kvar el makomos shelo hayu sham Yisrael me'olam. And now Jews need to go to new places. It's exactly the point. They need to go to new places. They need to start reading who knows what, because they need to find something different than what they're finding in their yeshuv. They need to start listening to alternative music and reading philosophy and reading all sorts of things, because they need to go out of the yeshuv, because in the yeshuv, in the dwelling place of the Jews, in what they're being served from within their home, within their hometown, within their home education, they're not finding what they're hardwired to need to find. And they go elsewhere. Okay, so I didn't get to the part about smicha. Mir Hashem, we'll pick up with that next time to explain why the smicha is the paradigm for how a leader becomes somebody that's really focused on working on themselves, and how the leader is the lesle migar meklum. The leader is in the place of nukva, which is the ultimate paradox, if you think about it. That malchus is the one that's nikva, and we'll see how Rabbi Nachman talks about that in terms of smicha next time. But Hashem should help us. Hashem should help us that, number one, in all our roles of leadership, whatever it might be, as Rabbi Nachman talks about elsewhere, that a person can be a leader over their family, in their marriage, in their parenting, in their shul, in their community, with their friends, and with themselves. That it starts with ourselves, that we should be able to truly see ourselves, to truly, truly look at ourselves. And number two, that we should be able to find hafochba, the kulaba, to find all the colors, all the flavors that exist really within the world of Torah, and to really be able to come to a place of emunah and knowledge that we don't need anything else. But we don't need anything else in a suppressing way, because we've all heard that a million times. You don't need anything else. But not in a suppressing way. The classic, you don't need anything else, is stop wanting other things. That's what it means, you don't need anything else. This is a very subtle but important point. Everyone's heard the Musar Shmuz of all you need is Torah. But typically what that means is all you need is Torah, meaning chop off, amputate parts of yourself, and then all you need is Torah. Okay, shkayach, thank you. How do I amputate myself? Okay, so all I need is Torah, meaning suppress being you, and then all you need is Torah. That's not what Rabbi Nachman is saying. What it really means, all you need is Torah, is you don't have to amputate anything in yourself, because every part of you can be found in Torah. Because Torah has every single color you need, every single flavor you need. And when you actually have the openness and the true mochen de gadlus, the true breadth and depth of what Torah actually is, the full spectrum of Torah, so then, taka, you don't need anything else besides Torah, because all the parts of you, all the interests in you, can find their true, elevated, fullest experience and actualization within Kedusha. Shkayach.